Tonight, Ida strikes. The storm making landfall as a hurricane, now a tropical storm, wreaking havoc and tearing through Louisiana and Mississippi. This with hours to go.
This is the most dangerous time
before the self-imposed deadline for a full withdrawal of U.S. troops in Afghanistan. Plus, the importance of vaccines and early testing in the fight against COVID-19 and the secret weapon to treat the disease.
Regeneron is the thing that we must use today to fight the battle.
And the fallen service members in Afghanistan brought home. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Children among the dead after a U.S. drone strike as evacuations in Afghanistan wind down ahead of tomorrow's withdrawal deadline. Good evening and welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Browder. Tonight, two top stories. We will get to Afghanistan, but we want to begin with what's now Tropical Storm Ida, the Category 4 storm knocking out electricity to millions and even reversing the flow of the mighty Mississippi River.
Though downgraded now, Ida still threatens to bring storm surge, flash flooding, and tornadoes. CBN's Brody Carter talked with relief crews headed into the destruction and has tonight's top story. Brody.
John, Jenna, help from all over the nation is on its way. 3,600 FEMA employees, 5,000 National Guard members, and hundreds of generators to help families left in the dark. Now, the White House signed a handful of major disaster declarations, saying it could be weeks before the Gulf Coast gets up back and running.
We're going to stand with you and the people of the Gulf as long as it takes for you to recover.
Life-saving efforts are the first priority after 150-mile-an-hour winds battered the Louisiana coast.
We know there's standing water. We're hearing reports of very high water, people trapped in their attics.
The storm ravaged homes and flooded streets. Overnight, the entire city of New Orleans lost power. More than 1 million customers are left in the dark across a 5-state radius from Houston, Texas to Memphis, Tennessee. In Houma, Louisiana, this man recorded the moments after winds ripped off part of his roof and sent it landing on a neighbor's house.
There's alligators out there. It's not, conditions. You just could not go out in the darkness, especially with the down power lines. It's very dangerous.
The storm surge and winds so powerful, they temporarily reversed the flow of the Mississippi River.
We can see some road closures on the major highways.
CBN's Operation Blessing, one of the first relief organizations on the scene, a crew of 18 giving food, water, and tarps to families, now taking the first steps towards recovery.
We're ready to go. We got our track shoes on. All of our goods are at the front of the warehouse there, so they're ready to go on to any vehicle that might need them. So it's consistent in our pattern of trying to get out the door quickly and safely.
As the tropical storm now crawls through Mississippi, a large majority of the eastern U.S. preparing for a deluge of rain, with possibilities of flash flooding and tornadoes.
I just want to encourage you to do everything you can for yourself and for your family and for your neighbors, and then help will be there just as soon as possible.
As officials survey the damage, it's nowhere near expected to reach the $176 billion of damage left behind from Hurricane Katrina. One person died from a falling tree in a suburb of Baton Rouge. That number is expected to rise. Thankfully, the federal levees, they withstood the storm, likely saving many lives. John, Jenna, back to you.
All right, Brody, thank you. And here with us now is William TRUEBLOOD, the divisional spokesperson for the Salvation Army and Emergency Disaster Services Director for Louisiana, Alabama, and Mississippi. William, thank you for coming on Faith Nation tonight. We know you joined us from Jackson, Mississippi. Give us an update on the damage down there. Is the worst over yet?
The worst seems to be over, but now obviously that the sun is up, it's saying what damage is done. And it's seeing all the things that happened. Obviously, we still have a lot of room for flooding. It's a very slow-moving storm, and because of that, it's very slowly going over areas that do not need rain, areas that have had a lot of rain. And we do have concerns as it continues to move into areas east of us that have already seen substantial flooding from previous storms earlier in the season.
William, as I understand, you had some people pre-positioned. So how did your teams fare during the storm? And can you talk about what the Salvation Army is doing to help?
During the storm, we really just tried to hunker down. We had a team from Texas set up in Beaumont. We had a team from Florida set up in Pensacola, and then our team set up in Jackson. And so what we're doing right now is we have about 36 mobile feeding units that we're taking in to go along with the 3 large kitchens to prepare food that are being brought in by our partners. And what we plan to do is bring those kitchens in, have them prepare the meals, and then use our mobile feeding units to go to the areas that have been most heavily impacted.
Looks like we're having a bit of a connection issue. I don't know if he can hear me, but I think we might try to get him back. In the meantime, we want to go to our other top story, John.
Well, as Jenna was saying, our other top story, it is now a race against the clock as the United States troops face the looming deadline to withdraw from Afghanistan tomorrow.
Now, hope for refugees desperate to escape the war-torn country is quickly dimming as violence surges. And now reports of civilians, including kids, killed in a U.S. drone strike and rockets shot into the Kabul airport.
CBN. Go ahead, Jenna.
CBN senior international correspondent George Thomas has more on the fall of Afghanistan.
At a safe house in Kabul, Jayuddin, not his real name, has been in hiding along with 12 other Afghans since the Taliban seized control of the city nearly 3 weeks ago.
One of us is always awake during the night, always walking around and praying. So if the Taliban should come and knock on our door, we should alert everyone.
In an exclusive interview with CBN News, Jayuddin and the others, who are part of Afghanistan's very small Christian community, told us they have no passports, no U.S. government-issued exit papers, and right now see their hopes of escape diminish with each passing hour.
We had many plans for preaching the gospel with other brothers and sisters, but then the Taliban took control so quickly. It happened so fast.
And now they've been marked by the Taliban.
Every day I receive a phone call from a private number, and the person warns me that if he sees me again, he will behead me.
On the eve of the deadline for U.S. troops to leave Afghanistan, Jayuddin and many Afghans and Americans still trapped inside are terrified. The Pentagon preparing for more Islamic terror attacks ahead of tomorrow's deadline.
The threat stream is still real, it's still active, and in many cases it's still specific, and we're taking it very seriously, and we will right up until the end.
ISIS launched 5 rockets at the Kabul airport today that were stopped before reaching their target.
U.S. military forces successfully employed our force protection measures to thwart that attack.
On Sunday, a U.S. drone strike targeted an ISIS suicide bomber. Civilians were also killed in the attack, including reportedly 10 members of a single family.
When we know that we have caused innocent life to be lost in the conduct of our operations, we're transparent about it. We're investigating this. I'm not going to get ahead of it.
In a foreboding sign of what to expect once American troops leave, the Taliban's newly appointed Minister of Education says any curriculum that goes against Islam will be purged immediately. The Taliban follow a very harsh and strict version of Islamic law known as Sharia that often puts women, girls, and members of religious minority groups at extreme risk. While Jayuddin says he's not afraid of dying, he is asking the world to pray for his country.
We are praying for each other that the Lord would put his angels around our house for our protection and safety. We are also praying for peace for everyone in our country.
George Thomas, CBN News.
Thank you, George. And here with us now is Bradley Bowman, a former Army officer, Black Hawk pilot, and Afghanistan war veteran, and now the senior director of the Foundation for Defense of Democracy's Center on Military and Political Power. Bradley, welcome. We just heard that piece there from George, and we heard from spokesperson John Kirby tell reporters that the administration has been transparent on Afghanistan. Given your background and your expertise and all that we've seen unfold over these past couple of weeks, do you feel that's true? Has this administration been transparent with the American people?
Absolutely not. In the annual defense bill that Congress passes, called the National Defense Authorization Act, Section 1215, your viewers can look it up, required this administration to answer a whole host of questions about Afghanistan before the president drew down the troops. But Congress also foolishly provided a national security waiver, and the Biden administration used that waiver so it would not have to answer the questions of the representative in Congress of the American people. Let me repeat that. They refused to even answer basic questions about things like counterterrorism and terror safe havens. They wouldn't answer those to Congress. And it's too bad they didn't answer those questions, because if they had answered them honestly in the light of day and stood forward and defended their decision, then Americans would have had a better idea of the catastrophe that the president announced in April.
Bradley, speaking about accountability for the Biden administration, there's now reporting that the Taliban told the United States it would stay out of Kabul if the United States could secure the capital city. The U.S. reportedly declined and said it only needed to secure the Kabul airport for its evacuation effort. Bradley, any knowledge about this, and your thoughts if the reporting there is accurate?
You know, I can't confirm or deny that, but what seems clear to anyone looking on from the outside is that President Biden made a decision to withdraw. And if you look at his April 14th speech, he was very explicit, I guess to his credit, that he was willing to ignore conditions on the ground. So a term that I keep using, it's not some partisan slander. It's absolutely true. This was a conditions ignoring, and explicitly conditions ignoring, timeline-based withdrawal, just like the withdrawal from Iraq in 2011 that then Vice President Biden advocated so vociferously for. And what did we get? 3 years later, we got the ISIS caliphate, and U.S. troops had to return at a higher cost. The main difference this time is instead of the catastrophe evolving over 3 years, it's evolved even before we've left. And we've already seen the high price that we've had to pay, not only in Afghanistan, but as I've said elsewhere, we're unfortunately going to see a massive boost in terror recruitment and radicalization based on the belief that jihadists in Afghanistan first defeated the Soviet Union, and now they defeated the United States, just like we saw during the heyday of the ISIS caliphate. This is going to have global ramifications.
National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan over the weekend said top military brass chose which airport to launch the evacuation effort from. This is a quote. Their advice was to close Bagram and focus on Kabul. The context that's missing here is that these military leaders were forced to choose just one after President Biden ordered the withdrawal against many of their recommendations. Bradley, it seems there is a lot of finger pointing happening here.
There is. And it seems, I never want to impugn anyone's motives, take things at face value. That's the way to avoid things getting even worse in Washington these days. But, it's just start with the facts. The facts are that the U.S. intelligence community has warned for years, according to New York Times reporting, that if we did a conditions ignoring withdrawal, that the Taliban would make gains and potentially topple Kabul. They've said that for years. When President Biden assumed office, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Secretary of Defense shortly thereafter went and warned him against this and recommended keeping a few thousand forces there. And then at the last minute, just before his April 14th announcement, they warned him again. And according to the New York Times, Secretary of Defense Austin, who actually oversaw the withdrawal from Iraq, and so he would know, said, quote, "We've seen this movie before." By that, he means a withdrawal that ignores conditions on the ground that goes badly. Biden brushed aside that decision. If I may, real quick, I just want to add a lot of, in this kind of finger pointing that's going on, a lot of people are trying to blame the catastrophe we're seeing solely on how the withdrawal was conducted or implemented. That really misses the main point. Those who have been calling for, quote unquote, ending endless wars in the pursuit of cheap talking points at town hall meetings got what they wanted, and now we're seeing the catastrophe. And that's not a partisan point. That's a let's learn this lesson together point, so we don't make the same mistake again in Iraq or Syria and elsewhere. But they got their way, and we're seeing what happens when you leave and ignore conditions on the ground, in my view.
Bradley, speaking of lessons here, I want to go back to something you just said earlier about the Soviet Union being defeated by Afghanistan and now also the United States. The American public is not used to losing. I got to ask you, for the U.S. military, what is it like for them leaving Afghanistan under these conditions? What's it going to be like for military personnel from here on going out?
I had thank you for that question. That's such an important question, because I suspect a lot of people watching served in the military and maybe served in Afghanistan. Some of them have, maybe did multiple tours there. And, many of our fellow citizens never returned home to their families, and many returned home, scarred with scars, both seen and unseen. So at this moment, we need to remember them and their families. And to them, I would say, You raised your right hand, you swore an oath to the Constitution, you agreed to deploy away from your loved ones to stand between them and those who would kill them. And for 20 years, you successfully prevented another 9/11 attack on our country. By keeping pressure on terrorists there, you prevented them from killing us here. And for that, you deserve great credit. This is not a failure of people, of our soldiers and Marines and airmen. This is a failure of our political leaders, a bipartisan failure, not the failure of our service members.
All right, Bradley Bowman with FDD, thank you so much for your time and your perspectives.
Thank you.
Coming up, what's next for kids and the COVID vaccine, and what some are calling the secret weapon in treating the disease.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back. The European Union is recommending EU countries ban Americans from non-essential travel over recent surges in COVID-19 cases in the United States. That international travel guidance coming as the Education Department opens investigations into 5 states over bans on mask mandates in schools. The investigations into Iowa, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Utah come amid new developments regarding kids and vaccines. The FDA now set to approve the Pfizer vaccine for kids as young as 5 this winter.
The vaccine could be available at some point late fall, more likely early winter, depending on how long FDA takes to review the application. Historically, they've taken 4 to 6 weeks to review these authorizations.
And now to an exclusive report from CBN News on COVID-19. America is at war with an ever-changing virus and multiple COVID mutations, but there just may be a secret weapon that could mean the difference between life and death.
Yeah, CBN News medical reporter Lori Johnson spoke to Dr. Chauncey Crandall, who explains this little-known but powerful treatment.
This week, President Biden announced all adults will need booster shots 8 months after becoming fully vaccinated because of data showing a decrease in their effectiveness.
Illustrating we're in a war against an ever-changing enemy.
It's mutating, it's mutating, it's mutating. And it's really, you know, your audience are Christians. This is really like the devil himself. He is going after everyone, and he wants to kill and destroy everyone in his path.
Florida cardiologist Chauncey Crandall says people should try to avoid becoming infected, but should know what to do if that happens.
The best thing is really always to stay strong and healthy. You know, there's always a debate about the vaccine. If you get the vaccine, I think you have some advantage. But those that are unvaccinated, and many Christians are unvaccinated, you need to take precautions. And if you do appear that you have symptoms, you need to get tested, and you need to get tested early on. Don't wait.
That's because of a little-known treatment called Regeneron.
This is a dramatic treatment for those that have COVID early on, not for the people that are hospitalized, but for the people that have early diagnosis.
Regeneron was given to President Trump after he became infected with COVID last year. The FDA granted emergency use authorization in November. The synthetic antibody begins fighting the virus soon after entering the body.
Regeneron is the thing that we must use today to fight the battle, and it is a winning tool.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis set up Regeneron infusion sites across the state.
You go there, you will get an IV, they will infuse this for an hour, and then you'll be under observation for an hour. And if you do well, you go home.
Can you take Regeneron prophylactically? In other words, can you take it instead of a vaccine?
Well, sometimes it is approved for families. Those are also candidates to receive Regeneron therapy as a protective measure. And we know that this therapy, which is a monoclonal antibody, will prevent them from getting infection in a household that is already infected.
Dr. Crandall says if more people used Regeneron, perhaps hospitals wouldn't be so overwhelmed.
Do you know that the families aren't even allowed in these hospitals? Ministers and churches aren't allowed in, and they're not going in. But I don't see the church outside. So I'm calling on the people of God to pray this Friday and Saturday night for all those that are in the hospitals that are sick and dying right now.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Tonight, the oldest member of the Supreme Court and one of 3 liberal-leaning justices is mulling retirement. Justice Stephen Breyer telling the New York Times, quote, "I don't think I'm going to stay there till I die. Hope not." In deciding on when and whether to retire, Breyer says he takes into account the words of late Justice Antonin Scalia, who told Breyer, quote, "I don't want somebody appointed who will just reverse everything I've done for the last 25 years. Those words of advice, a possible nod to liberals urging Breyer to step down so President Biden can nominate his successor.
Well, with the eyes of the world on Afghanistan, a word of warning from North Korea watchers over the Hermit Kingdom's nuclear program. North Korea appears to have restarted its plutonium-producing reactor, Yongbyon, according to the UN Atomic Agency. Plutonium is one of the 2 key ingredients used to create a nuclear bomb, along with highly enriched uranium. The restart may enable the reclusive country to make good on open threats to enlarge its nuclear arsenal.
Well, new hope for peace in the Middle East after the first high-level meeting between Israel and Palestine in years. The Sunday meeting between Israel's defense minister and the Palestinian president in the occupied West Bank, coming just days after President Biden met with Israel's new prime minister. This meeting between Benny Gantz and Mahmoud Abbas also signals a shift after a breakdown in communications in recent years, believed to be the highest level public meeting between the two since 2014.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Wednesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Finally tonight, America's fallen heroes return home from Afghanistan.
The President, First Lady Joe Biden, and the Secretaries of State and Defense, along with other military officials, paid their respects to the American military personnel who gave the ultimate sacrifice. U.S. service members carried out the dignified transfer service in Delaware for the 11 Marines, 1 soldier, and 1 sailor who lost their lives last Thursday in the Kabul suicide attack at the international airport. Something to consider here. All of the deceased troops were children during the 9/11 attacks, including 23-year-old Nicole G. Days before her death, G posted this photo of herself holding a baby in Afghanistan, captioning the photo simply, "I love my job." We wanted to pause tonight to reflect the price of freedom and the honor, the courage of those who bravely fought for it.